The 51-year-old suspect is in police custody. A cab driver actually witnessed him in the middle of his third attack, stabbing that young woman multiple times, and he called the police. The suspect was found with blood on his clothes, and he had 2 kitchen knives in his possession. Now, neither the identity of the attacker or his victims have been released yet, but the suspect, apparently homeless, had been sentenced in a criminal case just a few months ago, the Democratic mayor, Eric Adams, said, without giving further details. The suspect lives at the Bellevue Men's Shelter, and he, in fact, had 8 prior arrests.
In today's video, Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks reports on crime and mental health in New York. Anna Kasparian's story focuses on the ongoing trend of repeat offenders with mental health issues being arrested and released from prison after a short amount of time, only to reoffend. Let's watch as Anna Kasparian and Cenk Uygur unload on the woke left, as well as some activist organizations for their roles in putting citizens at risk.
And today we have 3 innocent New Yorkers who's going about their lives with a victim of a terrible, terrible assault. 2 lost their lives. 1 is fighting for her life. It is a clear example of the criminal justice system, the mental health system that continues to fail New Yorkers.
2 people have been killed and 1 person is in critical condition in the hospital following a string of stabbings across New York City. Now, the suspect, who is in custody, carried out these unprovoked attacks without speaking a single word to his victims. Now, here's more info on the 2 men who died as a result of the knife attacks. The first stabbing on West 19th Street killed a 26-year-old construction worker who was standing by his work site near the Hudson River a little before 8:30 a.m. About 2 hours later, and across the island of Manhattan, a 68-year-old man was attacked while fishing in the East River near East 30th Street. So the suspect then proceeded to travel north near the riverfront and stabbed a 36-year-old woman multiple times near the UN headquarters. Now, she's currently in the hospital in critical condition. Hopefully she will recover, but this is obviously an incredibly tragic story. Now, luckily, the 51-year-old suspect is in police custody. A cab driver actually witnessed him in the middle of his third attack, stabbing that young woman multiple times, and he called the police. The suspect was found with blood on his clothes, and he had 2 kitchen knives in his possession. Now, neither the identity of the attacker or his victims have been released yet, but the suspect, apparently homeless, had been sentenced in a criminal case just a few months ago, the Democratic mayor, Eric Adams, said, without giving further details. The suspect lives at the Bellevue Men's Shelter, and he, in fact, had 8 prior arrests and is believed to have.
If you like watching videos like this one, like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Let's get back to the video.
Severe mental health issues. So that's what we know about the story. Cenk, I was surprised that Eric Adams held a press conference about this because, unfortunately, this is a common occurrence in Los Angeles, where our mayor, Karen Bass, doesn't seem to find it to be an issue at all, and continues on business as usual with absolutely no solutions, considering some of the deadly stabbings that have happened, especially on public transportation in LA. But it's the same issue again and again and again, right? Individuals who have severe mental health problems, who are neglected, who are allowed to just roam the streets and cause all sorts of, violent acts. They might get, taken into custody for a little while, but then they're just released again, and they have severe mental health issues. They're going to continue doing the same thing unless we respond differently.
Yeah, so I'm curious as to why he was out when he was already sentenced. That's weird. So I'd love to see more details.
Yeah, Cenk, that's always my first question when I hear a story like this too. The person was sentenced. Why are they out of prison already? And as much as I joke around about Democrats and everything, A, this is obviously not a joking story, and B, like Anna said, I respect Eric Adams for coming out and acknowledging the problem, maybe more importantly, acknowledging the victims and not behaving, as Anna mentioned, like Karen Bass, who seems to use a tactic that I feel is all too common on the left, which is to ignore problems that everyone's seeing with their own eyes, hope that they go away, and then hope that people memory hold them and don't attribute the problems to the politician or the party. I'm kind of at a loss now because the mental health crisis in our country is very real, and I don't know that anyone's found a really good solution to address it yet, because when you go through a city and you see a lot of homeless, more than you're used to seeing of homeless people on the street, I think a lot of people's immediate reaction is, oh, they must all be on drugs, which not all of them, but many of them, there's a good possibility that they are. However, drugs is one big piece of the homeless issue, but the other big piece is that mental health. The drug issue and the mental health issue aren't black or white, meaning that you can't say, okay, this homeless person's on drugs and this one has mental health problems. I think a lot of times the drugs are a symptom of a larger mental health problem. So while I'm certain there are people that end up on the street without a home because they went down a terrible hole of drug use, I think a lot of people with mental challenges are using those very same drugs to escape the awful way they feel all the time, and then obviously becomes a crutch, and then much more than a crutch and a huge problem. But that's about as much as I've ascertained about the situation, and like I said, I wish I had some wise things to say about this topic, but I just don't know what the answer is exactly. And but I certainly pray that all of these people get the help they need, and lawmakers and citizens figure out how to help these people at some point. Let's get back to the video.
About that. Are there laws that saying that even if you get sentenced, you should be free to go? Because that defies all sense. But we'll find out. We don't know enough yet. But this goes to a pattern that we've seen a lot. 8 prior arrests, mental health issues. And so, unfortunately, there's 2 sides here that give, in my opinion, nonsensical answers to it. And the sensible middle is completely ignored.
100%,
right?
yeah.
So why doesn't Karen Bass do a press conference about it? Because the activist left would then yell at her and say that she was attacking the unhoused community. But it's not attacking the unhoused community. It's saying, hey, there's a dangerous person. We can't let them attack other innocent citizens. What did the construction worker do when he showed up to work, an average working man? The woman that was killed, what did she do wrong? She didn't do anything wrong. And so that she's a victim of injustice. And not injustice even from this guy, because this guy apparently has mental health issues, right? So, but it's an injustice from the system, because we decided, oh, here's a person with mental health issues that has had all these previous arrests. Let's give them freedom. That's not a thing. That doesn't make any sense.
And often it leads to the antithesis of freedom, because in this case, I mean, we're talking about someone who killed 2 innocent people and now will likely be in prison for the rest of his life. So how was it better to allow him to just roam the streets and cause this kind of damage, this kind of harm? You know, like, you talk about the activist left. I actually want to specifically talk about organizations like the ACLU, which, you know, they do good work on other issues, but on the issue of individuals suffering from severe mental illness, they have fought tooth and nail to prevent states, local governments from being able to incapacitate individuals like this.
Well, of everything they discussed on there, there is one thing that I know for sure will not help the homeless community, and that is labeling them as the unhoused community. When are they going to stop doing this? Making up new names for the ills of our society does nothing to help what's going on. The same way illegal immigrants is somehow now an insult. And what are they called? Undocumented persons. While everything I said about Karen Bass still stands true, I hadn't thought of how city and state leaders always need to take into consideration What response am I going to get from this activist group and this activist group? And will they like it or not like it? How big of a hubbub will they make about it? It doesn't mean that you shouldn't do what's right and shed light on an awful crime like Eric Adams did, but it's just another one of the many times that politics stinks, and every decision you make, even if it's black or white, right or wrong, there are always these loud voices, sometimes extreme on either side of the aisle, that politicians have to take into consideration, which in a perfect world, they wouldn't have to worry about doing anything but what's best for the citizens, you know? And Anna, while she gives credit to the ACLU here, I was completely unaware of the fact that they have a history of fighting really hard to not allow states to incapacitate criminals with obvious mental health issues. In a situation like this, it just seems like they're looking for a cause to get behind. I mean, what does the ACLU want? Do civil liberties to them mean anyone can just do whatever the heck they want to do? I'm sure they have good funding and they obviously have a lot of influence. Think about all the worthwhile causes they could be putting their time and money towards, as opposed to something like this that's not only obviously the wrong way to approach this issue, but it actively hurts law-abiding citizens within the community. Let's get back to the video.
Guy, because they think that it's a violation of civil liberties, that if someone has a severe mental illness, the state shouldn't force them to be institutionalized against their will. But if someone has a severe mental illness and is unable to make decisions for themselves, how does it make sense to allow them to just roam the streets and potentially kill people because of, their condition? That's going to lead to them being in prison for the rest of their lives. How is that better? How is that better?
So that goes to my point, that these issues are complicated and people want to oversimplify them for their own political purposes. So for example,
like I think I led off with, I'm kind of at a loss on this one because I don't have any answers. I don't have any suggestions. I'd love anyone out there who has an interest in this topic or just an opinion on this topic. I'd love to see a dialogue get going about real answers to help address this very real problem that's going on all over the country. Anyway, that's it for today's video. As always, we really, really appreciate you watching. We'll see you on the next one.